Now, there's absolutely no doubt about it that 2025 is indeed going to be full of expensive failures for the Walt Disney Company due to Bob Iger's lack of leadership skills and his deliberate agenda. We all know that they have been involved in overspending for a lot of Marvel projects and even Star Wars projects as well. And let's not forget about Disney's live-action Snow White 2025, which, by the way, there's a lot of drama behind the scenes going on with Rachel Zegler that we will be going over today, and exactly how this deeply impacts the overall structure for Disney Plus and everything related to the Disney live-action remakes, etc., etc. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So, Bob Iger, we know that this man will never learn because he absolutely refuses to learn about any kind of a mistake or deliberate things that he's inserting into all the different brands associated with Disney. We all know that at the same exact time, we got people out there like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, the top 3 shareholders over at Disney, funding all of this ESG nonsense and everything related to DEI, which, by the way, stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. They support things like race swapping and gender swapping even in many different Disney brands out there. So, focusing on what's been going on with Rachel Zegler of Snow White 2025 and how basically Disney's plan for enhancing that is all falling apart right now is just a living example of how Disney just keeps shooting themselves in the foot time and time again. Now, with both Bob Iger and the board of directors pushing the Walt Disney Company into a state of decline with no sign of resolution in sight, one significant development now involves more to do with actress Rachel Zegler, who recently has been involved in more drama related to the ongoing issues with Snow White 2025 and what Bob Iger and the board recently decided to do with the actress. Now, one shocking turn of events is that after months of negotiations took place about the Snow White trilogy that was mapped out by Disney for the 2 sequels that were indeed cancelled after they finally made a decision to fire actress Rachel Zegler from not just the 2 Snow White sequels to the live-action remake, but also for a voice-over role for an upcoming animated Disney movie that's currently in the works. It turns out that this is why the Snow White sequels were cancelled just recently, since they could not find a proper recast to take over the role of Snow White as Rachel Zegler, of course. Iger and the board recently made this call after multiple emergency meetings about their financial status, and Iger's cost containment plan that really impacted the Disney live-action remakes. However, Zegler reportedly is not taking this well at all, since she viewed her, of course, as an actress and her career would move forward within Disney, and what was going to be a 4-movie deal is now non-existent and will only be riding out the Snow White 2025 film, which is already going through financial setbacks as well, and endless test screenings that have failed. It turns out that Disney analysts recently informed those high up at the Walt Disney Company, including executives, the board, and even Bob Iger, that after Zegler had made those comments about Snow White 1937 some time ago, they saw an immediate dip in demand for Snow White related merchandise and viewership margin statistics on the Disney Plus platform for Disney animated material, such as the classics, especially for Snow White 1937. Now, this recent report that was made available from the Disney analysts to the Disney board is what got the board to instantly agree with Iger in a recent emergency meeting to let go of Zegler and, in turn, cancel the 2 planned Snow White sequels. Surprisingly, this recent decision is what led Disney to also canceling the Little Mermaid live-action sequel that they were planning to drop in 2027. Zegler and her team, such as her agent and manager, have also been battling the Walt Disney Company in recent days in a desperate move to get her voice acting role at least reinstated at the company. However, those like Iger and the board are not budging at all to those demands, and have even discussed the possibility possibility of now canceling the Snow White 2025 film, since it has gone through 4 failed test screenings behind the scenes that resulted in tens of millions of dollars more in reshoots that are estimated to already be around $65 to $70 million in funds. Now, Zegler is said to be having a nervous breakdown over those conversations that were made available, by the way, to director Mark Webb of the Snow White film. In addition to all of this, Zegler reportedly already played the race card at Disney for why they made their decision, and this situation behind the scenes is said to be getting quite ugly. Now, let me just say one thing before I move on here, guys. Now, the thing that's coming out of this is that Zegler is already being warned by Disney that she may be instructed to not appear at the world premiere of Snow White 2025 if this movie is not canceled. That's how severe the situation is pretty much at right now between Zegler, and how this is creating a domino effect for many of the upcoming Disney live-action remakes. Now again, like I've said before in the past, this is something that was being negotiated for months, about letting go of Zegler from those 2 Snow White sequels, and how now that basically resulted in the cancellation of those 2 Snow White sequels. Look, they're trying to pull this off with The Lion King. They want to make this into like a 3-movie system, essentially, where you have 1 movie, then you have a prequel, then you have a sequel, so to speak. That's kind of like what they were trying to do with the, live-action remakes cater to this character. And that's the overall structure that they were aiming for at the end of the day. So when you look at things like Bob Iger, and this is where things begin to escalate, is because, well, it has gotten to a point essentially where Bob Iger already actually made a demand to the marketing team behind Snow White 2025 to hold off on the release of the official trailer for a while. That was supposed to drop in late May of this year, by the way, that is now no longer happening until months later. So don't expect the trailer probably until around August, maybe September, to kind of ramp things up a little bit until that March release date. Look, we know a trailer has existed for many months already. In fact, it's existed for pretty much a year at this point. It was only shown to attendees, I believe, at D23, and it has not shown to the public at all ever since. A very similar scenario, by the way, to what Lucasfilm and Disney did with the Acolyte series. They demonstrated the trailer to the Star Wars Celebration attendees, but not to the general public for nearly an entire year. Actually, pretty much an entire year. And they knew exactly why. They held off on that because they knew the type of backlash that they would receive. So again, it's not just limited to the failed test screenings why they're holding off on that trailer, but it's also due to the ongoing drama related to Rachel Zegler getting removed from all those projects, the Snow White sequels that turned, of course, everything to lead to that moment where they would decide to cancel them because they got rid of her, and her voice acting role, alright, for that untitled animated Disney movie that's set to release in the coming years. And we already talked about this, but she was initially slated to appear in the Margot Robbie Pirates of the Caribbean film that would center on an all-female led cast. She was also no longer a part of that. So what's interesting about this moving onwards, of course, is the fact that you have people like Iger making bad calls, and at the same exact time trying to do damage control by really essentially admitting that this is going to be a failure. The fact that they really are making these decisions, I think it couldn't be any more clear that there's a lot of problems on the horizon for 2025. Snow White is going to be the big problem, but I think Captain America 4 is only going to make things worse before that even, of course, drops. So overall, I would really love to hear what you all have to say about this ongoing scenario happening behind the scenes over at Disney. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.